And you shouldn't worry about Kash Patel.
Okay.
You should worry about reporting the news fairly, which you don't do when it comes to everything Trump.
Emotionally dysregulated Republican senator and Trump sycophant Lindsey Graham lost his shit on live TV during an interview when the host dared to ask him perfectly reasonable but apparently uncomfortable questions about Kash Patel, Donald Trump's FBI director nominee, who has repeatedly threatened to prosecute his political opponents and members of the media. But before we unpack this meltdown, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got a couple of clips to look at here. We're going to start with Lindsey Graham, and this one is relatively long, okay? Now, this was from an interview earlier today on CBS's Face the Nation, and Lindsey Graham has been there multiple times. He is no stranger to Face the Nation or Margaret Brennan, the host, and she asks him perfectly fair questions, and he loses it. He unravels pretty quickly. So we're going to play this long clip and unpack it together.
Because that's a $4.5 trillion tax increase. I want to cut spending, but my number one priority is to secure that border quickly.
Well, we will watch the politics of the possible with the very complicated caucus in the House.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the Senate, though, because you are on the Judiciary Committee. Kash Patel, the pick to run the FBI, doesn't even have a hearing scheduled yet. In his 2022 memoir, Bill Barr said of Kash Patel, he's someone with no background as an agent, would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. He has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. The idea of moving him into a role like this showed a shocking detachment from reality. Was Attorney General Barr wrong then and wrong now?
Yeah, he was wrong then, he's wrong now, and I take my advice on Kash Patel from Trey Gowdy, dear friend from South Carolina who worked with Kash. Kash was a public defender, he was a prosecutor, he worked with Trey Gowdy about the Russia hoax, so I do think he has the experience, he has the trust of the president, and we'll see how all this plays out. But Trey Gowdy is enthusiastically supporting Kash Patel, and that means a lot to me.
Well, okay, but he's got a list he's published, Kash Patel has. He published it in a book of enemies. It includes people like the FBI director, Defense Secretary Austin, Bill Barr, former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, former CIA director Gina Haspel, the head of CENTCOM. I mean, do you take him at his word here that these are an enemies list and you're going to put him in a law enforcement role to go after him?
I believe the hearing will expose him to be a very qualified man of the law. He wrote a book. He'll have to answer questions about what's in the book. But I'm ready to vote for him because I know him too. See, you never asked me about the Russia hoax that he exposed. People on the right believe that he was part of the solution, not the problem. You asked a good question of Brett. Has Israel suffered because of this war? They went too far on the world stage. Here's what's happened on the world stage. The International Criminal Court is going to be sanctioned by the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, because they're trying to prosecute the Prime Minister and Defense
Lindsey Graham, this is a far cry
Israel.
from the question about Kash Patel. You took me all the way to Israel from Kash Patel. Are you you're committing to vote for him no matter what?
Yeah. Well,
you are going to vote for Kash Patel?
I won't say no matter what, but yes, I am ready to vote for Kash Patel because you will never ask me the role he played in exposing the darkest moment of the FBI since J. Edgar Hoover. That's why I trust him.
Okay. Ask him about going after journalists, which he's also said. I'm interested in the answer to that question.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We'll be right back.
Sure Democratic friends will ask him, and you shouldn't worry about Kash Patel.
Okay.
You should worry about reporting the news fairly, which you don't do when it comes to everything Trump.
Lindsey Graham, you're a guest on this program because we wanted to hear you out. And we welcome you back, as we often do, anytime, to Legacy Media.
So unhinged of Lindsey Graham. And notice how he didn't answer the question. So, like, what do you take him at his word that he's going to pursue Donald Trump's political opponents and members of the media and the people that he mentions in an enemy list in his book? You take him at his word there? Well, he's a qualified person. Listen, Kash Patel does have legal experience. There's no question about that. But so does Rudy Giuliani. Why didn't you make Rudy Giuliani Attorney General? Hell, why didn't you nominate Rudy Giuliani to be, a Supreme Court justice when you had 3 vacancies under the previous administration? Presumably at least in theory, there's more to the question than merely their base legal qualifications. If you have a candidate, imagine again, and of course the hypocrisy doesn't affect them whatsoever because their shamelessness is their superpower, but imagine you had a Biden nominee who was a lawyer, who was an experienced lawyer, but who said explicitly, listen, I'm going to pursue President Biden's political opponents. I'm going to go after members of the conservative media. We're going to do whatever we have to, civilly or criminally. We are going to take action. Imagine what Lindsey Graham would say in response to that. He would be like, well, it doesn't matter what their legal qualifications are. It doesn't matter if they're an experienced judge or an experienced prosecutor. They're talking about a level of explicit, vengeful political bias, the likes of which we have never seen. So, of course, we can't put this person in a position of power, which, of course, we don't have to worry about because President Biden never did that. President Biden never nominated somebody like that and would never nominate somebody like that. But Donald Trump has done that. And Lindsey Graham, who would be apoplectic if the shoe were on the other foot, is saying, well, listen, you don't need to worry about it. And he's going off on a member of the media for daring to ask a perfectly valid question about somebody who will become one of the most powerful people in the country. The FBI director is extraordinarily powerful. There's a reason Lindsey Graham mentioned J. Edgar Hoover, the most infamous director of the FBI, the first director of the FBI, whose command of that organization spanned decades and was insanely corrupt, Republican, by the way, insanely corrupt, such that in the aftermath of Hoover, who, by the way, scared the hell out of even presidents, reportedly even presidents were scared to fire this guy because of his cultish command of the FBI and, reportedly not just, wiretapped and surveilled people extrajudiciously, extra legally, but even his own allies in order to have blackmail, in order to have the means to extort and prevent him from being fired. So as a consequence, once Hoover died, there were many reforms that were made to the position of FBI director, and including like a 10-year term, for example, right? So that it would be depoliticized, particularly after the Watergate scandal as well. Like, this is how powerful that particular position is. And that's why Democrats and members of the media should be concerned about appointing someone who has explicitly said he will target them. And Lindsey Graham apparently can't fathom that. Presumably, Lindsey Graham can fathom that, but he recognizes he has no adequate defense for the things that Kash Patel has said and promised that he will do, that Lindsey Graham is forced to lose his shit when asked even a vaguely adversarial question about a man who is eminently unqualified for the position. But hey, to make matters worse, it's not just Lindsey Graham. It's also his MAGA Republican counterparts in the House of Representatives. So James Comer of the House Oversight Committee, MAGA Republican, he was asked about Kash Patel and going after, Democrats and Donald Trump's political opponents. He was asked about that on Newsmax, and this is what James Comer had to say.
House and obviously one of the prosecutors, they're still looking into Hunter Biden, okay? I mean, look, he's been pardoned. You can't charge him with stuff from 2014 on, allegedly, which I happen to think that should be challenged, but that's just me. You're still looking into him because there's a lot of other people associated with that, including some others that receive checks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody that was paying the Bidens 7 digits or more, they were all in trouble. They were bad people in bad countries. You look at Jim Biden, most of the people that gave him money were domestic, and they were people in trouble here in the United States. So, this is a shady influence peddling scheme. There are people in the government that covered this up. I hope they're held accountable. The ball is going to be in Pam Bondi and Kash Patel's court. I just met with Kash Patel minutes before I signed up to do this interview. So, we're talking about accountability. I hope they will hold him accountable. Jim Jordan and his Judiciary Committee and me and my Oversight Committee, we're here to work with this administration. Mm-hmm. Whichever direction Donald Trump wants to go in, we're gonna work with them. However,
so there you have it. Okay, and by the way, James Comer, won't be part of the confirmation process of Kash Patel because that's the Senate. James Comer's in the House, but they are eager. They are thirsty to politically prosecute and politically persecute Democrats, liberal media, progressive media, just media who happens to disagree with Trump in any respect, in any way, shape, or form. They're so James Comer, he still can't get Hunter Biden out of his mind. And so he is desperate to even still chase Hunter Biden, which only lends further credence to the wildly controversial pardon that President Biden made for his son. I mean, Biden's predicate for doing so was, they won't leave my son alone. There have been multiple investigations, multiple prosecutions. It's at this point, it's clearly personal. They're targeting my civilian son. They won't let him go, a recovering addict. And James Comer saying what he just said there almost vindicates Biden's wildly controversial decision. But there you have it, folks. I mean, there's no adequate defense for Kash Patel. There's just none. And watching people like lose their shit or deflect or dissemble in real time, or having to go, to Newsmax, right-wing media, to avoid any sort of adversarial question on the topic, just gives the whole game away. There's a reason Lindsey Graham lost his temper there, and it's because he knew he couldn't answer that question appropriately. Pretty sad. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.